Hi guys, it's Nick from Let's Chat, and in this video today I'm going to do my round 10 footy tips, and I'm also going to review my round 9 footy tips from last week. So let's get underway. So now I'm going to review my round 9 footy tips. So first game was Richmond v Geelong, and I tipped Geelong in this game and they lost. Richmond had a really good win over the reigning premiers in Geelong, and with Dustin Martin getting back to his good form with 4 goals, he was clearly the difference, and Trent Cotchin sneaked up in the forward line and kicked free himself. The 2 Brownlow medalists from Richmond, kicking 7 between them, which is really good. The next game was West Coast versus Gold Coast. I tipped Gold Coast. They had an easy win against West Coast. Next game was Sydney v Fremantle, and Fremantle somehow had a good win over them. And Fremantle season is starting to get back together now, and they did well on Buddy, keeping him goalless. He's getting a bit old, Franklin. But anyways, next game is North Melbourne versus Port Adelaide. I tipped Port Adelaide and they won easy. They're on a roll here. I think they've won like 6 in a row. Port Adelaide. Next game is Hawthorn versus Melbourne. Melbourne had a comfortable win. I tipped Melbourne. Next game was Brisbane versus Essendon. Brisbane had a comfortable win over Essendon, with Joe Daniher kicking 6 goals against his former club. Next game was Carlton versus Western Bulldogs. I tipped the Blues, but they lost. It was a shit game to watch. Bulldogs outplayed us. Next game was Adelaide versus St Kilda. Adelaide got the job done really easy, with Tex Walker kicking 5 goals. And the last game was Collingwood v GWS, the Orange team, as a lot of people call these days. Collingwood again had another comfortable win, and yeah, they're the favourites for the flag. So I got 6 out of 9 this week, which isn't great, but most people would have got around there, I reckon. So now, the first game of this week is between Port Adelaide and Melbourne. Both teams are in good form, especially Port Adelaide winning their last 6 or so games. Port Adelaide had a really good win against North Melbourne last week, and Melbourne had a really good win against Hawthorn last week. So this is going to be a tough game. It will be a good game, I reckon, but I'm tipping Melbourne to win by 7 points in this game. So the next game is between North Melbourne and Sydney. North Melbourne, well, they had a horror loss against Port Adelaide. It was expected. They were booing Horne-Francis because they used to play for North Melbourne, he did. And with Sydney, well, they've been coming off some bad form. I think they've lost their last 4 games, and they haven't really shown that they're a threat for the premiership this year. Their last win was against Richmond in Gather Round, and I was at that game, surprisingly, when Papley kicked 6 goals. But yeah, Buddy Franklin's getting old, and he hasn't really been kicking any goals as much lately. He needs to shine if he has anything left in the tank, and if Sydney have any hopes of playing finals at all. So this is a tough one, but Sydney, well, they're in slightly better form than North Melbourne, you'd think. So I'm going to tip them by 36 points. I reckon they'll get the job done. So the next game is between the Western Bulldogs versus Adelaide. Western Bulldogs, they had a convincing win over Carlton, and with Adelaide, they had an awesome win over St Kilda. They won by 50-something points, with Tex Walker kicking 5 goals. So both teams having wins last week. But I reckon the Bulldogs are in slight better form, so I'm going to tip the Bulldogs to win by 14 points. So the next match is between Fremantle and Geelong. Fremantle had a great win last week against the Swans. They kept Buddy Franklin goalless. It was a good win by them. And with Geelong, they had a really poor loss against Richmond. They have a couple of injuries at the moment, and yeah, they weren't up to the challenge. But I reckon Geelong, they'll bounce back. Even without Dangerfield, I still think they can bounce back, Geelong, and I'm going to tip them to win by 27 points. So the next game is between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, the Q Clash at the Gather. So Brisbane just come off a gutsy win over the Bombers, with Joe Danaher kicking 6 goals against his former club. With the Suns, they had a comfortable win over West Coast Eagles in Perth, with Matt Rowell dominating, with 29 disposals and a goal, I believe. But in paper, I'm tipping the Lions to win by 68 points. I reckon they're too strong, and they're one of the better sides in the competition so far. So the next match is between Essendon and Richmond, the Dreamtime game at the G. Essendon are coming off another horrible loss, this time against the Lions, and Richmond somehow upset the reigning premiers in Geelong, with Dusty Martin kicking 4 goals, getting back to his premiership best in 2017, 19, 20 years, the Brownlow medalist / Norm Smith medalist. So Richmond should win this. I'm going to tip them by 18 points. Now we move on to the Sunday games. And the first game of the Sunday afternoon is between Hawthorn and West Coast in Tasmania. The two bottom sides, 17th versus 18th. Hawthorn, they had a horrible loss against Melbourne, with West Coast having a horrible loss against the Suns. So this is going to be a really close game, but since it's in Tasmania at Hawthorn's home ground, I'm going to tip the Hawks to win by 4 points, then they might get off the bottom of the ladder. So the next game is between Carlton and Collingwood at the MCG. I have bad history against Collingwood, especially in those 2 close games last year. The one that really hurt me more was the game from the last round, where we fucked that lead up in the last quarter, and bloody Elliott ended our season. So I'll never forgive him and Collingwood for that. I'll never forgive Collingwood for those games last year, especially that round 23 clash where we lost by a point. It still really haunts me to this day, and we were in the 8 every game last year except for that fucking last round, that last minute of the season. So I'm expecting Carlton to get payback. I don't know if we're going to be strong enough, but I'm hoping we can try and get some payback. I'm going to tip Carlton to win by a point in another thriller. So the last game for the week is going to be GWS versus St Kilda at Giants Stadium in Sydney. GWS, well, they had another horrible loss on the weekend. They lost to Collingwood as expected, and St Kilda lost to Adelaide as well. So both teams had horror losses. Heading into this week, since St Kilda are in better form than GWS, I reckon they'll bounce back and they'll win by 26 points. So that's all I've got time for this video. Thank you all for watching this video. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Catch you guys.